Hi everybody, thank you for joining me once again. I'm really pleased today to be talking to Giles Grover from the End Our Cladding Scandal campaign. It's a campaign that I want to know more about. I'm very keen to support because it is an issue that so many people are facing. So Giles, really grateful for your time. And we really want to unpick this and understand a lot more because it's all a little bit hazy, isn't it? The numbers of people affected are vast by all accounts.
Yes, they are. Thank you for the opportunity to raise awareness of this crisis. The numbers we're still trying to get a hold of them. Government's still trying to get a hold of the exact number of people affected. Over 3.5 years after Grenfell, they're still not sure how many buildings are affected because you've got 2,820 buildings over 80 metres registered to the fund. But the problem is that a lot of buildings under 80 metres, they don't know if they're safe or not. They're not deemed to be high risk, so they're going to take a long time to get the surveys. If you include those buildings as well, where the regulations were a lot less strict, or the regulations as they were, then that's up to 80,000 buildings, 100,000 buildings. So we talk 700,000 people in high rise, but then you're looking at millions of people.
It must be incredibly frustrating. It's frustrating sitting on the sidelines and thinking what's being done because we don't hear a lot about what is being done. I'm hoping that every day there's meetings of very important, influential people deciding how to work through the crisis. But is that happening?
You'd hope that. I might have thought that 2 or 3 years ago, but unfortunately, the last year has really laid bare the government's completely ineffectual approach to actually dealing with this crisis. They keep tinkering around the edges because they're worried about EWS1 forms and flat sales. Whereas what we need, what everyone knows we need, is pretty much just a cross-industry approach to say, right, let's risk prioritize all buildings, then you need to provide the funding. Government so far is literally just tinkering around the edges, keeps telling us these warm words, we've given 1.6 billion, massaging the stats as well. So we're all getting very, very angry.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. It feels like people are just sticking their head in the sand, thinking it's going to go away, but it's clearly not going to go away. Giles, are you affected yourself?
I am indeed. I first discovered my building's unsafe only 2 months after the Grenfell tragedy because we have the same aluminium composite material cladding on our buildings and still have that on my building.
And so that's how you got involved in the campaign right back from the beginning.
That's the first part of it, yes. I mean, I was actually one of the directors of the residential management company. I've been a leaseholder since 2008, and we joined the residential management company board because who's made up of owner-occupiers, basically trying to do the right thing. So kind of in between a freeholder and the leaseholders. So we wanted to do the right thing. So we saw the building wasn't being looked after. Then I think it was literally a month and a half after Grenfell, the results went away of the various cladding types outside our building. And, I still remember that morning when getting an email saying, you've got the same ACM category 3 as Grenfell. So since then, it's just been a downward spiral, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I feel for you. I want to talk generally, but given that you are living in a property that is affected, how has it impacted you?
No, don't know where to start. It's all my life is cladding right now. I wake up thinking about it, to hundreds of different WhatsApp messages about it from different groups. The End Our Cladding Scandal campaign is from affected leaseholders. I'm doing it throughout the day because I'm not working right now. Then later on, some of the other people who do have jobs, we then start chatting again 6 to 10 o'clock. So it's constantly affected my life. Financially, we've had to spend money on interim measures. We don't know if our insurance is going to go up. I know there's a 30 to 45 grand bill around the corner. So every day you're just thinking, what's next? What's going to happen? And that's one element of it. And it's compounded by the fact that we're in a pandemic, 23 hours a day. I'm just in my flat. I'm on the 9th floor. As I say, there's ACM right up one side. There's timber as well. So if anything happens, we do have alarms, so you feel a bit safer. But if anything, you're just constantly on edge. I'm just watching TV and just thinking, 5 minutes in, hang on, haven't watched the last 5 minutes of this because I've been thinking about cladding.
Really?
So it's just constant for all of us. The mental health effects are just, they're unhidden. They're hidden, really. And people really need to understand it's not just finance, it's everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I can really imagine. And you know already you've got a 45 background bill coming.
Yeah, so this is the thing that we start in January 2019. We were told it'd be 2 million for 300 flats. So we thought, I mean, it's still horrible. Okay, no one really wants to pay. That'd be about £6,000 each. Then 6 months later, it's suddenly 8.2 million plus that. So we're looking at right now about 11 million. We hope that will be enough, but that's only to get what we think will be safe because we've got that many different issues. So an average 35 to 40 grand each. We've applied to the fund, the building safety fund that the government's announced, but we still don't know whether we're going to get the funding from it.
Mm. It's tough times, and it's really difficult. It's difficult to believe that it's happening and being allowed to happen and not being sorted out. It's just really difficult to fathom. Giles, I really feel for you, but can we talk sort of generally, because you are obviously heavily involved and it's impacting your life quite severely, emotionally and financially. But can we just talk sort of generally about the issues that are being caused?
Yeah, so as I say, the difficulty is that since the 20th of January advice notes, I'll probably go back to there last year, where literally all buildings are now trapped in this whole chaos and uncertainty because they don't know whether their buildings are safe. It actually goes back for decades. And this is one of the points that we always try to make, that it's not a political thing, because it's different governments. They've all contributed by not having proper regulations in place, which has just allowed all the buildings in this country to, no one knows if they're safe or not, whether it's insulated. Sorry,
can I interrupt you there? Sorry. Were they built, when they were built, did these buildings satisfy regulations at the time?
No one really knows. The problem is, and again, we go back to, I was looking, there was a fire in 2009 in Lucknow House that tragically killed 6 people. There was a letter from the coroner in 2013 saying, you need to review the building regulations because they're so vague. If that had been acted upon, I personally think Grenfell wouldn't have been the tragedy that it is. So that's the problem, that there's certain, the regulations are too vague. That enabled the builders to just do what they want. There was no oversight. Under 80 meters, you could do what you want. The manufacturers could, fake all the tests as well. No one was keeping an eye on it at all. Suddenly, obviously the Grenfell tragedy happened, and then the government's just literally trying to go for a zero risk approach. The right reasons in terms of safety, but it just means that no one knows. Whichever building, 2, 3 stories, 10 stories, you just don't know what's behind the walls.
And it's not just the cladding. I mean, Grenfell, the tragedy there was the cladding, and you're living in a building that has the same cladding. So that's obviously fairly front and center in your mind. But it's not just cladding, is it? We talk, and it's the cladding scandal, but it's not just cladding.
No, and that's something that we always try to make clear. We started off in April 2019 as End Our Cladding Scandal because it was about ACM. But even my building, we've got cladding issues. So we've got a lack of cavity barriers, so nothing will stop fire spreading even behind brick. We've got timber walkways and means of escape. Most sort of potentially dangerously, we've got no fire protection to the structural steel. So that should be just something very simple to apply. But that's the way that a lot of builders, subcontractors have cut corners just by knowing that no one's ever going to check. So it's literally, as I say, internal. And that's one point that we should make. It's the internal compartmentation as well.
Yes.
You can spend all your time focusing on the outside and fixing that. But the inside, if there's issues on the outside, there's probably going to be issues on the inside, let's face it.
And arguably, it's probably the inside ones that are going to be more costly to put right.
Indeed, yes. Some of those, the most recent one, the first one that we saw last year, where they had figures, was about £115,000 per leaseholder. So
per leaseholder?
Per leaseholder. There were fewer leaseholders there, but that's the problem, that the building's quite old, and they literally have to rip the floors apart, rip the ceilings, and basically make sure that the individual flats are compartmented. They're just
Total
not right.
Nightmare. Total nightmare.
It really is.
But I come back to whether the developers built it following the regulations. Who's at fault? Is it the government who set the regulations, or is it the developers? Is it the government who set the regulations and now realized they weren't suitable, or is it the developers who didn't follow the suitable regulations?
That's one of the key messages of our campaign, that successive governments have not had the correct regulations in place. That's allowed the builders to do what they want. So it's both really, and that's why I was saying government has to fix it, and then government can take their sweet time getting the money back from the developers, because they're both of them at fault. Literally, the select committee report says the leaseholders are the only ones that are innocent in this mess.
Yeah, I completely agree. How do the insurance companies react?
Insurance companies
Haven't we got that far yet?
They're right now. The market's failing right now, but the difficulty is that a lot of the buildings that they're being discovered as unsafe, they've actually got better safety measures in place now, whether it's alarms, whether it's a waking watch, but the insurance is still going up 500 to 1,000%. And we're seeing that regularly. We're seeing that literally week by week basis, where some people are now, okay, previously they were having to pay, 100 quid a year. You're talking 1,000, 1,500 quid. And then what's the most frustrating thing is that we've had as campaign groups, we've had a lot of meetings with the civil servants, with government. They keep saying, since August, they've been saying, we're looking at this, we're going to get involved. There's ministerial appetite to get involved in this space. We keep giving them examples. Every couple of months, we give them examples. We've just this week had another request. We need more insurance examples to prove it's a market failure. You only have to pick up the newspaper to see every day what's going on.
Yeah. Oh, what a mess. Oh, what a mess.
Indeed.
Can we talk also about because we are where we are, and there are some flats that are affected because they're dangerous, and some in fact all flats are built in those heights are affected. And I'd quite like to hear your explanation, or I'm sure our audience would want to hear your explanation of why it actually affects all flats rather than just those who might have dangerous cladding or not have suitable regulations.
Sure. Well, potentially it affects all flats. Potentially it affects, flats, houses, because flats are, as a lot of people know, they're literally the first step onto the property ladder. There are a lot of first-time buyers, a lot of people using government-backed schemes. We are now seeing, in my building, there used to be 10 to 15 to 20 flat sales a year. The last 2.5 years, there's been 0 sales at all. Imagine that just in my building, and then imagine those people who want to move. And it's that, I think recent analysis said 16% of the whole market, but imagine the wider chains that are affected. And that's kind of the issue, that the government's now concerned about that, but they're only worried because it's affecting the flat sales market and people can't take advantage of the stamp duty holiday.
And of course, a lot of those people affected bought under the Help to Buy scheme, which was a government-backed scheme. So, and then we've got the shared ownership mess as well. People who only own a portion of their flat, but owe the full amount to sort out the cladding.
Just when you think it can't get any worse, and that's one of the worst things, where I own 20%, but I'm liable for 100% of the cost. So government knows this, but again, they're not dealing with this properly. We're still waiting. February 2021, we're still waiting for some sort of one-stop proper resolution that will fix this, and so we can all just move on with our lives.
There's a lot of chat, but it just feels to me the longer they leave it, the worse it gets, the worse the publicity. I mean, you and I are talking about it. It's not looking good for the government because we're still talking about it 3 years on. Nothing's happened.
It's absolute madness.
Actually, Giles, what I was also interested in is, because I don't know where the situation is now with the lack of fire inspection or qualified fire inspection people, engineers, to go around and declare this building is not safe and this building is safe. Because am I right thinking there's only 300 of them or something in the country, and they're just not getting round the block? So all of the blocks, affected or not, are actually unsellable, and if they're unsellable, no one get a mortgage on them. That means they're worthless.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So last year, I think there were 294 fire engineers who could actually do these proper external wall surveys. Government's again known that for 8, 9, 10 months. They're now saying, we're training people. We'll make sure surveyors can do it. Okay, so that started this month, but it's not filtering through yet. Everything government does is too little, too late, and that's our concern. And the next announcement is just going to add further layers of complexity, just like all the last years have done.
So there aren't any more fire inspectors as yet. They're being qualified, but they're not on the ground yet.
Well, government say they're spending £700,000 training them. Government says a lot of things, but we've not seen the effects of it. There's a what they call a paperwork exercise, where surveyors might be able to do the work, but they might have issues getting the professional indemnity insurance.
Yeah.
So there's not, it's not just valuation agents, it's not just surveyors, it's not just engineers, it's the full industry, mortgage providers.
Yeah.
All of them need to be bought into the
Yeah.
solution rather than piecemeal here, there, and everywhere.
And the banks won't lend, will they, unless you have a certificate to say that your building is safe. It's not the fact that it might not be safe, it's the fact that you need to have a certificate to say that it is safe. And with only 300 odd inspectors qualified in the country, they're just not covering the ground.
Exactly. So yeah, the EWS one form is probably, you know, our worst nightmare, really, because we're all trying to get one, and then some of us, you know, will receive one through the day that says you've got B2, which is literally the worst rating. So until you get one that's A1, then the you know, clean bill of health, then you're trapped. You don't know how safe your building is. Some of them, we've been told that some medium-sized building, it will take 10 years before they get round to actually evaluating them. So I can't, you know, nearly 4 years after Grenfell, who knows when this nightmare is going to end, to be honest.
Would you have moved over the last 4 years if you'd been able to?
I potentially might have myself. I've sort of done it the other way around, where I lived in a house and I've moved to a flat because I like city centre living. So I might not have moved, but I know many people who might. I know people who can't start families right now because they can't move. They can't, you know, I know people who had helped to buy assisted schemes where they can't rent their flat out either. So everyone's just trapped.
They're completely trapped. Completely trapped. So what would you like the government to do in actual fact, if you could write out what you wanted, what would it be?
I'd probably say we need the funding. We need the upfront funding. We need to make sure leaseholders are protected. The problem is the government, the Treasury, is not just going to write a blank check. So they need to get a proper hold of the buildings that require remediation, proper risk-based approach of all buildings, not just over 18 meters, all buildings. So you can actually, and this is what's really frustrating. Robert Jenrick on the 20th of January said, last year, 2020, said he'd commissioned leading experts in the field to develop a sophisticated matrix of risk. We've not seen anything like that just yet, as yet. So we need proper risk-based approach, and then you'll know what funding is required. Basically follow the Australian model of saying, okay, if you've got a high-risk building or a medium-risk building, we don't have to necessarily remediate everything, but can we add fire suppression systems, alarms, you know, to actually move the risk down? That would be a better holistic approach for all buildings, inside and outside.
Yes. But I mean, the costs are going to be stratospheric. They just can't end up in the lap of the leaseholders because the leaseholders don't have the money.
They don't, and that's the thing. You need the money up front. You need to pay it, and we're talking tens of thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
In December, we've heard talks of loans for leaseholders, but loans will just instantly push us into negative equity. It will depress property prices. You like a second mortgage, and we'll be paying that back for the rest of our lives. So government keeps trying to say, and it has said for 2 years, we'll protect leaseholders from all costs. Then it's unaffordable costs. But still, 6 months after saying that, they can't tell us what unaffordable means.
Yeah. And we just really bear in mind the leaseholders, such as yourself, have bought. You've done the right thing. You bought the right flat. You invested in property. You took on the loans. You believed the regulations were up to scratch, and either the regulations or the builders, somebody was at fault, but it wasn't you.
Yeah, that's the thing. Even the Law Society has come out only a couple of days or yesterday saying that everyone's followed the process. Again, we use conveyancers, we use professionals. We stupidly thought the regulations would mean that the building we were going to move into, our first home, will be safe. To find out that actually just by a bill landing on your doorstep saying it's unsafe, we've got a guy in a high-vis jacket walking around, you might have to pay £50,000. Imagine that landing on your doorstep.
I can't.
That's being repeated across the country. Hundreds of thousands of people they don't know where to turn until the government resolves it. And can I just make the one point we're talking about the government? What really frustrates me, and it's one of my bugbears, the government, and I understand we've got to build houses. Absolutely we do. But we need to make sure that the property market is actually working, and we need to make sure the houses built are safe. And what really frustrates me is that government's given us 1.6 billion, actually 1 billion to the Building Safety Fund. So, you know, they're massaging the stats there. But last year, the government zero rating of VAT on construction of new homes cost the Exchequer £16.1 billion. even just a fraction of that over 20 or 30 years would pay back to make our homes safe.
Yeah. I guess we use the word government, but as you made the point earlier, it's successive governments. And also in that kind of circle of blame are the developers and are the freeholders and possibly are the insurance companies. I mean, this is a real mess, but you guys are the ones left living in the mess and picking up the bill at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's the thing. We look at all the cross-party MPs, select committee, the Housing Communities Local Government Select Committee, the Public Accounts Committee, they all say the same thing. The leaseholders are innocent. As you say, it's regulators, it's developers, the building owners, the insurers could, step up as well. But right now, the leaseholders are the ones, because of leasehold law, because this archaic system that we're being forced to pay. The government's recognised that and said they'll help us. But all they're doing is making sure that we're forced into 60-year loans.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
It's madness. It's absolute madness.
No. I mean, my own personal feeling is that the government need to actually sort this out very, very quickly and put the hand in the pocket. I know they've got lots of pressures on the Treasury at the moment, but this is a very serious one. It's impacting a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So it does need to be sorted out as soon as possible. Having sorted it out, I would hope that then they can figure out between insurance companies and freeholders and developers actually who's at fault where and who needs to actually end up with the bill.
Yeah, exactly. Completely agree with that. And we're not going to get anywhere without government putting the money up right now. And that's the thing, they can recover it over years. They talk about national debt, but this is a national crisis that's affecting, as I say, all people from all walks of life. Even if they just cynically look at it as a vote winner, which it very much would be, then that's fine. But just get the money up and protect us, like you said, you have done. You would do for two to 3 years.
Yeah, but of course, it's not just you guys that are affected, and those people who live in the affected flats and blocks. It's actually the whole of the housing market, because as you mentioned earlier, a lot of it are first-time buyers, second-time buyers. People want to move out of flats into a house, and my feeling is a great part of the bottom rung of the housing ladder has been removed, and if you remove the bottom rung, it affects everybody further up. So actually all homeowners and prospective homeowners in the country are being affected by this. What can we do to help you? What can we do at Move IQ, and what can our audience do, people who are interested in supporting the campaign?
Yeah, firstly, thank you to yourself and to Move IQ for the support, all the support so far the last 6 months. It's really important to get it out to the national consciousness. I mean, I probably hark back to a year ago where we were looking at regional titles and no one was really understanding what was going on. Now we've got literally newspapers from across the spectrum that are publishing this, that are constantly saying how unfair this is. So we're getting there. The more you can do, as I say, keep raising the issue in the national consciousness. What we really need to do, what we're focusing on, is looking at Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak. They're the ones in charge. Rishi's in charge of the purse strings. What we're also doing as part of the campaign is getting all our residents, all their friends, all their family members, everyone out there to write to your MPs, write to your Conservative MPs, make sure they're aware of this injustice. Because, as you said, a lot of especially Conservative MPs, but MPs of all stripes, they'll say there's no problem in my constituency. But like you say, it's the full property market. It's flats of all sizes. So get writing to your MPs, make sure, basically, we just need to force Boris and Rishi to just help us out and not make us take life-changing loans.
It's not help you out. it's do the right thing. It's do the necessary thing. This isn't going away.
Well, that's the frustrating thing, that for years they said building owners and developers should do the right thing. Now they've got the opportunity to do the right thing. They're not doing it.
Giles, thank you very much. Just as a kind of conclusion, can we just remind people of the numbers of flats, the numbers of people you think are being directly affected?
It's hundreds of thousands of people, and it's potentially millions, because you've got all the flats affected right now.
Which are currently unsaleable, unmortgageable, and therefore worthless.
Exactly, and the value, that's the thing, could be valued zero. And some people say, "Oh, it's an investment. Investments go up and down." It's not an investment. It's my home.
I wish you all the very best of luck, and we will do everything that we can to support the campaign. It has to be resolved. Good luck.
It has to be. Thank you.
I'm sorry you're stuck in it, but you'll get there. I'm sure you will.
Thank you.
Best of luck. Thanks for your time, Giles.
Thank you. No problem.
Cheers.